going on, everybody? Oh, we are here. Our first major live stream from the second channel, where we will be discussing the singer David and the unaliving of Celeste. Welcome, one, welcome all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys come in and hit that like button. This is going to be the True Crime channel, where we'll be able to explore a lot more of these cases in depth, especially with the sensitive nature of it. So there are majority of the Luxters on the main channel not big fans of true crime like that. And so I don't want to put anything there that would be disturbing or anything to anyone whatsoever. But do know that these cases are very sensitive. They have a lot of graphic details. And so this is where it will be here on the second channel, where we will be discussing these cases over here on Lady Luck Club with Sweet Tea. So to get started with this, first of all, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hit the like button if you're listening in from Twitter X or on Instagram, because I'm actually streaming on Instagram now. Make sure you come on over to YouTube, subscribe to the Lady Luck Club with Sweet Tea, as well as the Lady Luck Club. Hit the like button and leave your thoughts. Engage in the chat, share the information out so that we can continue to have this community grow, as well as, you guys can get up-to-date information regarding what's happening in the court. So let's get to it. I'm going to pull this on up and make sure we got this going. So I have a couple of videos I want to check out. One is Blacky Speaks, as well as Rapaholics. There are a lot of content creators covering this case, but these were the two cases that, two videos that kind of give a really good summary of what's happening for those who don't know. This singer, David, unalived a 14-year-old girl that he was having relationships with. And mainly because it was, alleged that she threatened him to expose their relationship if she didn't, have the relationship she wanted. It seems like he was just with her for the sexual nature of it all and not necessarily taking it seriously. And she was kind of tired of being the, friend with benefit, however you want to put it. And so he took her life. And so he desecrated her body, cut her up, put her in the trunk of a car, and she was not discovered until about 2 to 3 months later, while the car was sitting out in the sun in California, in the heat. It's got to be just the most gruesome. It's just gruesome and cruel. And of course, her family was waiting in limbo trying to find her and everything. And here she was the whole time in pieces in the trunk of his car. So he's going to burn in hell, but whatever. Let's get to this. Shout out to all of you all. Make sure you guys go check out Blacky Speaks, as well as Rapaholics. We also have Trap Lore. And there are couple of other content creators that have been heavily reporting, plus Law and Crime, as usual. So make sure you guys go check out all the great content out there covering this story. He's about to be held accountable. So let's get to it. Hit the forward you guys can see in here. Let's go.
David, spelled D4VD case, is officially going to trial. Over the last few days, we finally got our first look at the case prosecutors have been building against David Burke. We heard about the blood discovered inside his garage, the blue plastic reportedly found embedded in Celeste's remains, and the supplies prosecutors say David purchased shortly after she disappeared, including chainsaws, a body bag, a shovel, and an inflatable pool. We also heard the medical examiner classify Celeste's death as a homicide caused by multiple penetrating injuries, while acknowledging that decomposition made it impossible to answer exactly when she died, how long she survived, or who was holding the object that killed her. And then came the messages The court heard about Celeste becoming pregnant at 13, having an abortion, and later expressing anger and regret over what happened. And we also saw how that, quote unquote, relationship allegedly continued in secret, and how during the final hours before her death, Celeste threatened to expose David and destroy his career. And all this was presented during a 5 day preliminary hearing. It was not a trial, it was a preliminary hearing, not to determine whether David was guilty or not, but to decide whether prosecutors had enough evidence to place the case in front of a jury. And the judge has now decided that they do. So David has officially been ordered to.
So, as usual, when it comes to these matters, preliminary hearings are opportunity for the prosecutors to present the evidence to determine if there is probable cause to move the case forward to a trial. It is also a matter where they get to address, evidence being admitted into the case. So that would be the time where, let's say, photos, videos, statements, witnesses go in and they testify, they provide testimonial evidence, and then, of course, the physical evidence and the DNA evidence that helps to establish the probable cause. Probable cause is not the same as proving beyond a reasonable doubt. Proving beyond a reasonable doubt will be for the trial hearing. For the preliminary hearing, the burden is probable cause. Is it sufficient enough? At least 51% convincing to move the case forward. This evidence has been overwhelming. He purchased a pool and cut her body up in a pool. And pieces of the blue pool were embedded in her muscle tissue. And used a chainsaw. Who would be dumb enough to do like this? Is so stupid. He asked as if he just couldn't get, what was it? Why 13-year-old? And as you all heard, she was once upon a time pregnant. Disgusting.
Stand trial on the charges of murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains. The judge ruled that prosecutors met their burden on every count, yes, and ordered him to remain jailed without bail. So for the first time, this case is moving beyond the question of whether there is enough evidence to continue. And at trial, prosecutors will have to prove that David killed Celeste, dismembered her body, and left her remains inside the front trunk of his Tesla because he feared the, quote unquote, relationship would destroy his career. And David's defense will have to confront all of this, not just individual weaknesses in the evidence, but the full story prosecutors say those pieces create. And during this preliminary hearing, we saw 12 witnesses being called. However, the district attorney's office actually said that these 12 witnesses is actually a very small portion of the evidence investigators have collected. So there's going to be even more witnesses, meaning some of the most important information in this case still has not been revealed to the public. David is scheduled to return to court on August 31st for his post-preliminary arraignment, but that is not his trial date. That's only the arraignment. So after everything we've learned over the last few days, one thing is now official. David is most definitely cooked. I mean, he's going to have to answer these allegations in front of a jury. Yep. And not only that, he's going to be in front of the whole world being told exactly everything that he did, or let's just say allegedly did, to Celeste. Now let's talk about a few things here. So the fact that David is actually going to trial is extremely significant because there was always a possibility that the judge could decide prosecutors simply had not shown enough evidence to move forward with the case. But in this
situation, the defense attorneys challenged the court to have the prosecutor's office present evidence in a preliminary hearing. And the prosecutor was like, okay, cool, bet. We got like 15 terabytes of evidence. We're ready when you are. And then when the preliminary hearings begin, then all of a sudden the defense attorneys realized, oh, wow, this is pretty overwhelming. And then they were trying to now push back and delay. Well, how are we going to get all of this evidence and all this stuff? They asked for this. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, as a standard part of criminal procedure, to say we need to establish, some sort of merit or preliminary hearing where we can at least have probable cause met. The defense attorneys asked for it. It was almost like they were daring the prosecutors to do it. And then when it was done, then they wanted to try to retract and come up with excuses to try to now delay things. And it's like, some of this stuff is, he went and purchased chainsaws. Like, this dude is demented. And I'm gonna go over the lyrics to his one of his, for some reason, most popular song, which is it romantic homicide or something like that? It is absolutely ridiculous. Yes, the arraignment is where you enter the plea. Yep. So you get arraigned, you basically are entering your plea, and then from there they determine, of course, they already going to have a trial. They then have the parties file any pre-trial motions to address whatever they need to address at the time. Let's say if the prosecutors, you know, they want to move forward, but let's say if they decide they want to try to offer a plea deal, then they can do it after the arraignment. Um, it's just he wants to go to court with this. He knows that he is going to lose. He knows that, but he's sitting in court, and a couple of people who were content creators that actually went in the courtroom. They actually observed the preliminary hearings. Came out, I think, trap blog, Ross something trap like that. But he wrote copious notes, and he did like an 8-9 hour video of all of his notes from each day he attended court, and the details were so gruesome. He said it was hard for him to do YouTube videos because YouTube was taking down his videos because of the graphic details. There was a chainsaw involved with a kiddie pool. I mean, he had no consciousness of this. None. And his mother, it seems like she's aiding in the singer's horrible behavior. She's trying to help cover up and move money and assets to LLCs. It's absurd. If anyone should file a wrongful death lawsuit, it should be the mother of this young lady and her family that should be suing the singer and his mother because she's not being made guardian of his estate, moving LLCs around, being named as the registered agent for those LLCs. So, he's trying to put everything under her. Sue her too in a wrongful death lawsuit because this is ridiculous.
Situation that was nowhere near what happened. Over 5 days, lead prosecutor Beth Silverman and her team carefully walked the judge through the entire timeline from David's alleged relationship with Celeste to the final time she was seen entering his home, and then everything prosecutors say happened afterward. They presented the messages, photographs of them together, videos, witness testimony, and forensic evidence piece by piece, until the judge ultimately decided that there was probable cause on every charge. And according to District Attorney Nathan Hochman, what we heard during the preliminary hearing,
there was additional evidence that was actually considered in this case that we anticipate being presented at trial. I'm not going to go into the specifics of that additional evidence, only to say that we presented a significant but small fraction of our evidence in this preliminary hearing.
This was a very small fraction of the evidence the prosecutors say that they have. And I think that is the biggest takeaway, because everything we've discussed over the last few days, the messages, the blood evidence, the purchases, the Tesla, and the condition in which Celeste was found, was just a very small preview of the case they plan to present at trial. And that should tell us a lot. However, unlike a preliminary hearing, at trial, the standard is obviously going to be much higher. They will have to take all the evidence that they say that they have, place it in front of 12 jurors, and convince all 12 jurors unanimously that every element of the charges has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And the district attorney made it very clear that his office believes it'll be ready whenever that trial begins. Now, as far as when the actual trial is going to happen, there's no confirmed trial day yet. After his arraignment on August 31st, the court is going to begin setting the actual trial date then. So that's around a month, right? Mm-hmm. Now, here's the interesting part. The trial could actually be set as early as 60 days later if David's defense continues demanding that everything move quickly. But that doesn't mean that the trial is officially beginning 60 days after August 31st. It only means that legally it could be scheduled that soon. And prosecutors are publicly saying that they will be ready whenever the defense wants to go, right? So that should tell you a lot about their confidence in the case that they have. Now, interestingly enough, right, David's own legal team reportedly wanted this process to move very quickly, especially initially when he got arrested. Mm-hmm. And I just want you guys to remember, if you go back to September 2025, when Celeste's decomposed and dismembered remains were discovered inside a Tesla registered to David, David was not arrested for all that time between September and April 2026. So for months, he was still a free man. And as a matter of fact, some of his Los Angeles neighbors even told reporters that before his arrest, David had been staying inside his property and just partying it up. So while investigators were quietly building this case behind the scenes, David
And he was able to get a whole album done and created a whole press tour release for that album. And you can't make this up. He was living like the girl never even existed. He even had a live stream with a couple, like 2 or 3 people in his house that noted the smell. He tried to excuse the smell and tried to brush it off. And I don't think she was in the car by that point. He had her in bags, in pieces in bags. And they're in the house getting dressed on the live stream. 2 girls doing makeup. There's another young man there. They had to go and pick him up because he had been subpoenaed. They had to collect him. They got a capious. He was capious. They had a warrant for his arrest, and they went out and collected him. That is how serious that is. And it's astounding how just little things like that, even just the smell of that is unforgettable. That type of smell of, decomposition in the human body and all that. That smell is something else. It's beyond this world. And you will never forget it. And you recognize it when you do. I don't know how they were in that house. Can you imagine living in that home and being shut up in that house like that with that smell? My God.
was apparently still living his life, I guess unaware of just how close everything was getting. And then now months later, here we are. And also another aspect, and we're going to make another video on this, but it's actually now been confirmed that the district attorney's office are now considering whether to seek the death penalty,
Absolutely.
although that decision has not been made yet. But now that we're here, I would not really call this a win just yet. And the reason why I would say that is because prosecutors have only cleared the first major hurdle. Because during this trial, they have to show that David is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt on every element of these charges. So I don't really want to celebrate too much right now. Because also we have to remember that David's defense did not present its own evidence during this hearing. They challenged the prosecution's case and raised several arguments, but the district attorney acknowledged that the defense was not required to reveal everything it may eventually present. So while the case clearly looks bad, especially considering everything that they say they have, the real fight has not started yet. So we're going to see during the trial if this whole case holds up beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the most important thing. So I just don't really want to get ahead of myself too much. But with that being said, based on everything we have seen so far, prosecutors appear to have serious amount of evidence against David. And one question that still hasn't been answered fully is what surveillance evidence may exist from outside the house, the surrounding neighborhood, or David's movements after.
Yeah, there's cameras everywhere. He had cameras up. The neighbors have cameras up. You have cameras in street lights. That's the type of stuff that people oftentimes ignore. So there are cameras everywhere around his neighborhood. I mean, of course there should be. He lives in an affluent neighborhood where people are, millionaires, multimillionaires. I didn't even know he had as much money as he had. The wealth that he has is ridiculous. From all of 2 to 3 good years of singing. I mean, he started out as a gamer. It goes to show, man, the things that we sit here and we'll prop up. He started out as a gamer. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it's just astounding that he was able to catapult from being a gamer within, 3 or 4 years to now having whole albums and stuff. Doing his own music for his gaming. It is so crazy. It's exactly, man. It is absolutely disgusting. Complete disregard for human life. It's like humanity losing its soul or something. He dropped music the whole time he's been in jail until it was taken down. That's what I'm saying. This is the epitome of making music off of a crime or making money off of a crime. If there's a scenario where someone has the absolute right and standing to sue him for wrongful death. This is it. And get all the money and prevent him from making any money off of this. Because that song he did, if you read the lyrics to it, the romantic homicide, something like that, it's almost like word for word what he did to this young lady. Well, I don't know when these singers gonna learn to stop telling on themselves in their music. It's so ridiculous. I'm gonna pull it up. You can't make this stuff up. I think it's romantic. Yeah, it's romantic homicide. Okay, here are the lyrics. Because this is unbelievable. And this is not a new song. This song was like what? 22. They said I'm seeing 2022. 4 years ago. I'm scared. It feels like you don't care. Enlighten me, my dear. Why am I still here? I don't mean to be complacent with the decisions you made, but why? In the back of my mind, you died, and I didn't even cry. Not a single tear. And I'm sick of waiting patiently for someone that won't even arrive. In the back of my mind, I killed you, and I didn't even regret it. I can't believe I said it, but it's true. I hate you. I mean, the idea that even if you're talking about creative expression, this is what he's thinking. This is his thought process. This is his mindset. At some point, we just need to, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. From the great Maya Angelou. Believe them. Even if they're trying to disguise it as creative expressions. Unbelievable. He told on himself. And it's disgusting, man. It's disgusting. He had been with this little girl since she was like 11. How old is he? 21?
Afterward, we know that prosecutors say Celeste arrived at his Hollywood Hills home on April 23rd, 2025, but was never seen alive again. So when this case eventually goes to trial, the biggest question is going to be, in what type of surveillance footage can David be seen? And what story does that tell us? Because keep in mind that every category of evidence tells a different part of the same story. We have the messages showing David and Celeste's relationship and their communication leading up to her disappearance. We have the online purchases prosecutors connected to what allegedly happened afterward. We have the blood and DNA evidence from the garage. We have the Tesla's location history and the fact that Celeste's remains were ultimately discovered inside that vehicle. And then we have the medical evidence, which tells us what happened to her body, while also leaving major questions about the exact timing and sequence of her death. So now they're going to have to take all those separate pieces and prove that they lead back to David. In my opinion, the most telling part about this case is the communication between David and Celeste, because that is where prosecutors believe we can see the motive beginning to form. The night before Celeste arrived at David's home in the Hollywood Hills and was never seen alive again, she allegedly sent David a message threatening to end his career and ruin his life. Then the following day, they say that she went to his home and was never seen alive again. So when you place that message beside the timeline, the prosecution's theory becomes very clear. They believe that Celeste had become a threat to everything David had built, and that he killed her before she could expose their so-called relationship. Now that motive still has to be proven at trial, but the messages do more than simply show that David and Celeste knew each other.
I don't think motive has to be proven for someone to be found guilty of murder, but I could be wrong. Let me look it up for the state of California. I don't know if motive has to be proven. I mean, understanding the motive helps you to understand the act itself and why it was so heinous. If seeming like he was driven by a financial gain or to maintain his financial status. But I don't think you have to prove motive in court. I'm just looking it up right quick so I can make sure I'm correct on that. No, you don't. So here it is right here. You do not have to, in California, prosecutors do not have to prove motive to convict someone of murder. Y'all see that? They must prove the statutory elements of murder, including causation, malice, or aforethought, and lack of lawful justification beyond a reasonable doubt. And taking someone's life because you decided to get with an 11-year-old girl and she wanted to be more serious than that, and somehow you didn't. And her saying, well, I'm just going to put this out here, and then you take her life so that you can maintain your quote unquote lifestyle. Yeah, that's definitely going to prove that you have some lack of lawful justification. It was definitely malice and heinous because he took her life and he cut her up. He desecrated her. It's so they don't have to fulfill the obligation of motive. That's not a prerequisite to prove murder. And just the idea that he put her in bags like she was trash and left her in the trunk of a car for months. You can't justify that at all. It's incomprehensible and egregious. And as opposed to his mother saying you're gonna be held accountable for this because no one told you, someone had to know that he was messing around with an 11, 14-year-old girl. Someone had to know. 13 years old going in to get an abortion. Someone had to know that. I wonder if his mother knew. And why would anyone be okay with that? This is why we don't just look away at things. Somebody out here over 18 with a 14-year-old kid. Why wasn't he turned in? The people that were aware of this relationship, why was this not reported to CPS? This is disturbing.
They give them basically a way to explain why they believe the murder happened when it did. And that's why the communication may become one of the most important parts of the entire trial. Now, the question is, how is David even going to explain any of this stuff? How does he explain Celeste threatening to expose him, arriving at his home the following day, and then never being seen alive again? How does he explain the purchases, the blood evidence, and her remains eventually being found inside a vehicle registered to him? That is going to be extremely difficult to defend. Because here's the thing, David's legal team, his defense, they don't necessarily have to prove exactly what happened, but they do have to create enough doubt to question the prosecution's version of events. And so when every separate piece of evidence appears to point in the same direction, that becomes a very difficult story to break apart. And there's another part of the communication that may even be more difficult for David's defense to explain, because keep in mind, they reconstructed an entire timeline of what happened before, during, and after. And according to the timeline presented in court, David arranged an Uber to bring Celeste from Lake Elsinore, where she was from, all the way to his home in the Hollywood Hills. As she was getting close to his house, Celeste sent David what would become her final known text message. She told him that she was almost there and asked him to open the door if he was home. And after Celeste reached that property, her phone went completely silent. No more messages, no more communication, and according to prosecutors, she was never seen alive again. So that creates a very specific window of time that David's defense will eventually have to address. What happened after Celeste reached his door? And how come she arrived and then never left the house? And what exactly happened?
And why is he ordering chainsaws or meat cutters and whatever? It was like electric handheld chainsaws. Why who orders that? You're rich. You don't have to cut down a tree or wood or anything. You don't see him outside using that on nature itself, what it's designed for. Then why would anyone need to order that? These are purchases that kind of just are considerably unorthodox. You had to have a groundskeeper or somebody to come out and clean up. Let's not forget the smell in the house of death in the house. Oh my God.
When she was inside. And if David was not responsible for death, how did her remains eventually end up inside the front trunk of the Tesla registered to him? You don't really have to be a prosecutor to question everything that happened here, okay, in the story. So those are the type of questions that makes this case so difficult to look at. And that's why it's so difficult for anybody to look at this case and treat all these events as random coincidences. So yeah, when we say that David is cooked, he is cooked, okay? So as disturbing as the last few days were, we still only know a very small part of what really happened. And you know what the biggest thing this entire story has reminded me of is that evil can exist much closer to us than we realize. You have to remember, David was not some completely unknown person operating in the shadows. He was a successful artist with millions of listeners, millions of young fans just like Celeste, a growing career, and an enormous spotlight on him. He appeared publicly, released music, and continued living his life while carrying a secret this horrifying behind the scenes, allegedly. And
Is his nails painted? What's going on with these kids nowadays? Is that nail polish on his fingernails?
obviously, these allegations still have to be proven at trial, but if the prosecution's version of events is true, it shows you that fame, talent, and success do not automatically tell you anything about who someone truly is when nobody's watching. The thing is, sometimes we assume that the most dangerous people will be easy to recognize. We imagine that evil always looks obvious, that there will be warning signs everyone can see. But sometimes it can exist behind a familiar face,
Okay.
a successful career, and a life that appears completely normal from the outside. And that is what makes stories like this so disturbing, because it forces you to ask, how well do we even know the people around us? And how much darkness can remain hidden until something finally brings it into the light? So yes, David is absolutely cooked. And now he is going to have to face these allegations at trial. But beyond David, Celeste represents so many children who were not protected when they should have been. Children who were manipulated, ignored, placed in situations they never had the maturity or power to fully understand. And that is why this story is so much bigger than just the fame aspect or David himself or the music or the headlines surrounding this case. At the center of everything was a 14-year-old girl who deserves to be protected. She deserved the opportunity to grow up, discover who she was, and live an entire life beyond the circumstances she had been pulled into. Instead, her name is now connected to one of the most disturbing cases we have ever covered on this channel and probably music history. I mean, honestly, I don't know anything that's darker than this. So while the trial will eventually...
And all the people that knew, this David dude had to have, producers and managers and a whole attorney, bodyguards. Someone knew that this idiot was dating a 14-year-old or that he got her pregnant at 13 and had an abortion. Someone knew that. How did she get to the doctor's office? What is the doctor's office that performed this procedure? There is no way you go and have all that done and no one knows. I don't know any, in-home care abortions out here. I just don't. She would have had to go to a clinic somewhere. She was on one of his live streams, and people were asking in that live stream if that was the same girl that was like 13, 11, 12, 13 years old. That's it. And where are the parents? Where are the parents? Man, I understand they could be. CC said that 764 Colt was busted in Houston. It was headed up by a 16-year-old boy. I wonder if he wasn't a part of that. Crazy. Are they? They didn't have citizenship? Because that could explain why they didn't try to make a fuss about this. Like, they can't speak English. Oh my God. That 14-year-old was out here. Was she even going to school? If she's sneaking over there at his house, was she going to school? This girl can't be missing like that and no teacher or a school administrator notices. She should be enrolled in school.
Eventually decide whether David is legally responsible. I just hope that throughout this process, people never lose sight of who this story is actually about. Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Rest in peace.
Celeste Hernandez. I said Riviera. I'm sorry.
On March 28, 2026, David Anthony Burke spent his 21st birthday in a mansion that his management team had been renting for him in the Hollywood Hills. This may possibly be David's last birthday celebrated in the free world, because on April 16th, 2026, David was arrested at that same
Is that him? How old is he? You want to know how old he is? David Anthony Burke. I'm sorry, I said her last name incorrect too. Wanted to correct that. He's 21 years old. He was born March 28, 2005. Oh my God. 3 days before my birthday. He is 21 and she was 14. You mean to tell me he couldn't find a young lady his age? What in the world? Boy, that's some sick stuff.
Residence and charged with the murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. If he's found guilty, David faces decades in prison, if not the death penalty.
There was an evil version of myself that would kind of come out at random moments. He would commit the crimes that I would have to solve as a detective. I'd be like solving murders that I'm committing myself.
Yeah, you see how he's just telling on himself. This is his mentality, his thought process. Y'all, the devil comes in many forms. Even wrapped up in somebody that could sing or write music or whatever, play video games, whatever else he did.
That I'm committing myself.
Right now, David's pleading not guilty, but with his preliminary hearing on July 21st, 2026, with prosecutors claiming they have 40 terabytes worth of evidence against David, with the death penalty still on the table, it'll be up to the judge to review the evidence and determine if there's sufficient probable cause for the first-degree murder and related charges to proceed to a full jury trial against David. Do prosecutors have the evidence they need to lock David up for life and bring justice to Celeste's family? Will David end up taking a plea and getting out of jail a lot sooner than the world thought? We're going to unpack it all, starting from the day that David was taken away.
Tonight, dramatic video captured by TMZ showing the tense moments LAPD officers arrested singer David on suspicion of murdering a teenage girl who had been found dead in the trunk of his car.
If you try to run or you try to resist, you will get hit with my feet or shoot her. I got you.
In footage obtained by the California Post.
I know he knew they would have shot him. He said, I got you. Boy, listen, let me tell you something. You want to know if somebody's rough and tough with an afro puff? Put them in front of a cop with lots of guns. Put them in front of SWAT. Yeah, let's see how this go now for you. What? Why did it take so long for him to be arrested? That's my whole thing. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I got you. No fight at all. No resistance whatsoever.
Officers in tactical gear are seen walking him in handcuffs yesterday on the streets of the Hollywood Hills.
Look, it's going to obscure my view from the gate.
If you try to run or if you try to resist, you will get hit with my feet or shoot her.
I got you.
If you try to run,
I know you do.
Get out of premises and you will get bit.
I got you.
I got you.
All right, so the gate is locked. Do I open the gate?
Coward.
Open the
Hey,
gate.
Jim. Hey, Jim. Good. Doing it. There. Oh my God. Nice. Look at this. All these cops.
Now, before we dive into what prosecutors and the world knows about not only David's relationship with Celeste, but also why they believe David actually had the intention and carried out the murder and mutilation of Celeste, we first got to understand a key roadblock in this case that may actually work in David's favor. And that is the condition that authorities actually found Celeste's body in. It was completely dismembered in 2 separate plastic bags in that front trunk. Because of that, Celeste
I don't see much difference between this photo and this photo except her hair down. Y'all, this looks like a little girl. He was 20, he's 21. She was 14. She looks like a little girl. Well, she was 9 here and 11 here. 13 maybe. He got this girl an abortion. Like, oh my God. Oh, he going to hell.
cause of death may end up being the centerpiece of the trial. Without a clear cause of death,
God,
without
Heather.
knowing if it was a homicide, an accidental overdose, it becomes a weapon that David's defense can use against prosecutors. How can they prove he was the one behind this
Yeah, he's not
if
the
they don't even
greatest.
know
He's
how
kinda
she died
basic.
to begin with? Well, we would quickly start getting some answers. Prosecutors say that David actually
Heavy on
murdered
it.
Celeste on April 23rd, 2025, but had ended up mutilating her body on May 5th. She was then left in that Tesla under his name for 4 more months until September. LAPD would do a conference where they said that David is not just charged with first-degree murder, but also with mutilating a body and lewd and lascivious acts with a child under the age of 14. He's also charged with interfering with an active investigation, trying to protect his career and hide from the charges he would have initially been faced with, which was that he was having S relations with a minor under the age of 14.
Today, I am announcing the charges against David Anthony Burke in connection with the brutal and horrific murder of Celeste, a 14-year-old at that time. And there are 3 sets of charges that have been brought. The first-degree murder with special circumstances. And again, those special circumstances are lying in wait. That Celeste went to Mr. Burke's home on the night of April 23rd, 2025, as alleged in the complaint at his invitation, and again, was not heard from again. The second is a special circumstance being that this murder was committed for financial gain. As the evidence will show in court, the financial gain was for Mr. Burke to maintain his very lucrative musical career that Celeste was threatening on that particular night. The third charge, in addition to lying in wait and for financial gain, is murdering a witness to an investigation. In this particular case, as the evidence will come out in court, the witness to the investigation was Celeste. And the investigation was into the lewd and lascivious sexual acts committed by Mr. Burke that is the subject of count 2 of this complaint with Celeste while she was under 14 years.
Now, David would show up to court on Monday, April 20th, and maintain his innocence, pleading not guilty to the charges against him. His legal team would also claim that they received no evidence, no discovery that prosecutors have thus far collected, no autopsy reports, no information that David could use to defend himself in court.
This the kid here that had to be collected. The boy in the middle.
No information that David could.
This kid here, I think. They had to issue a warrant for his arrest because he was subpoenaed. I don't know if it was a kid that it looks like him that was in the live stream, but I want to say this is the same kid. Does Cali have the death penalty? Let me see. Yeah, go check his voice out. I mean, he had this weird soft like singing style. It was like falsetto. It gave off this falsetto type vibe with it. Where it's just like real airy and high and light. It had no depth, no grit or anything like that. So voices like that, you know, it's easy to auto tune it because it's not very creative, or you know, it didn't seem like he had a wide range to me. But that's to me. That's to me. If you listen to, like, I guess his most popular song is the one about committing homicide. It's so crazy. But to me, it was nothing different or unique about it. It didn't stand out. Yeah. It was just like real falsetto. That's it. It's like, well, I've heard better singers. Does California have the death penalty? Does anyone know? I'm gonna look it up. California does not allow the death penalty. Yeah, California does not allow the death penalty, but its implementation is currently on hold. A moratorium on executions was ordered by Governor Gavin Newsom in 2019, and there is a standing federal court order against carrying out capital punishment. Although the death penalty is technically legal, no executions have taken place since 2006. Now, if they did have the death penalty, or if it does somehow, come up, and that's what the prosecutors are seeking, then I think his defense attorney would have more of an incentive to want to make a plea deal so that he can avoid the death penalty. So, in some cases, having the prosecution pursue the death penalty is almost like a kind of, especially when they're confident in the evidence that they have, it's almost like a guarantee that the defense is going to try and get a plea deal. And then that way they can still get him for life without the possibility of parole. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try that. Because honestly, it's so much evidence. It's just, his attorney should be ashamed of themselves for even asking for this. They wanted the preliminary hearing, and they wanted it right away. And they underestimated the prosecutors. Why they do that, I don't know. But, his friends sitting here dodging subpoenas and stuff it just make it look worse. Someone has been in that house that can describe the smell and all this other stuff. No one knew this? No one knew about this girl? Seriously?
Could use to defend himself in court.
Calling People versus David Anthony Burke. Good afternoon, Mr. Burke.
Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman to the people, Your Honor.
Thank you. And you're requesting a preliminary hearing within the period?
Yes, Your Honor. From the media reports,
wow,
apparently there have been 4 months of secret grand jury proceedings. We believe that Mr. Burke is entitled at the earliest opportunity to an open preliminary hearing and the proceedings not be done in secret. So we are asking for a preliminary hearing to be set at the earliest possible date on the 10th.
This is David's attorney now. Remember that. This is David's attorney saying we want this as soon as possible because we want to see the evidence. And oftentimes it's a strategy for the defense. Let's see what the prosecutors got. They want to charge my client, blah, blah, blah. All right, let's see what they got. Your Honor, in an effort to have a speedy trial, can we get on going with this preliminary hearing and force the prosecutors to show us what evidence they have? And guess what? The prosecutors bet. Hold your breath.
10th day. We believe the actual evidence will show David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, nor was he the cause of her death. And we would like to be able to have the evidence come into the light of day at the earliest opportunity in order to establish that. We're asking for April 23rd as a 3 of 10, Your Honor.
We'll be very happy to put on the evidence that we've collected in this case in the last several months.
Plea of not guilty has been entered on behalf of Mr. Burke. The matter is ordered assigned to Judge Charlene Almeida.
Yes, Your Honor. If I may just put on the record, we have, as soon as the people arrived, delivered a informal discovery request consistent with Penal Code Section 1054. We have been given almost no discovery thus far. We've received a 3-page follow-up report, no autopsy report, and a copy of the complaint. And we would ask the people respectfully to produce discovery at the earliest opportunity.
Now, the prosecutor would claim that there were over 40 terabytes of
40
evidence
terabytes.
in this case, and some of it has already been released, which we'll break down shortly in this video.
There's approximately 40 terabytes of discovery in this case. Moreover, in order to obtain the transcripts from a grand jury investigation, counsel has to file a motion. She knows the way the system.
Exactly. Why do these attorneys get in court and they act like they don't know how things work? You can't make this up. You know you got to file a motion for it. And listen, the discovery process is one both sides understand they have to do. But if you're asking for specifics such as the transcripts from the grand jury, like testimony given in that or whatever, you got to file a motion to get that. That's not something that the prosecutor is not going to just give you that. You got to get a motion for that. Then you have court reporters that have to actually be able to present that information. So court reporters can be backlogged by months. It would have to be like, we need to prioritize this and expedite it, you know, in the interest of pursuing justice. And this is a high profile case like that. There are exceptions to that. But why do these attorneys get in court and all of a sudden we don't know how to do anything? We know nothing.
I'm not able to gather those.
Exactly.
They have to be provided after the court orders them released because it was an investigation.
Right.
Second of all, if counsel plans on going to a preliminary hearing within the 10 days, it is unlikely that there will be very much discovery provided within that period, given the voluminous nature and how long it's going to take to copy onto drives. In addition to that, the coroner's report was sealed in this case in order to prevent it from hampering.
Y'all see that? There's a theme pattern here. The same thing happening in the Nolan Wells case. The ME report, autopsy report, was sealed. Same as it is with this, because you want the jury to see it. So that's standard across the board. We're talking about two different states with a murder case where you have the autopsy report being sealed. So that is standard for that to happen. Because I think, you know, we tend to forget how things work from case to case. But it is standard for the DA to decide to have the autopsy report sealed until you get it before a jury, even until trial. Who knows? That ensures that you don't create this bias and you don't put information out there that should not be released to the public. That could be a possible way to taint the jury. So.
Truthful testimony from witnesses that testified at the grand jury, so an order will also have to be obtained in order to get the coroner's department, which is now the medical examiner's department, to release those materials.
Yep.
It's surprising news given that the district attorney's office held a press conference this morning where they discussed the cause of death, apparently under seal and not released by the coroner's office, as did the robbery homicide unit to the press. So we would again reiterate, we believe that Mr. Burke is entitled to discovery. We have served the people with notice. They have 15 days to produce discovery in this case. We would ask that they do that in conscientious earnestness and as quickly as possible.
Bail to stand at no bail. Thank you.
So as you can see, David made his first appearance in court in late April.
So he was denied bail, thank God. But here's the thing. It's not as if the court would not grant an extension because of the laborious nature of trying to give someone even 20 terabytes of data. They have 40. Maybe the defense attorney has no idea what a terabyte is. Okay.
And many people were questioning why it took so long for prosecutors to actually formally charge David. Celeste's remains were discovered inside the front trunk of David's Tesla in September of 2025, yet David wasn't arrested until April 2026, 7 months later, and nearly a year after prosecutors alleged that Celeste's life was taken. But throughout that time period, prosecutors appear to have been building their case, reportedly presenting evidence and testimony to grand juries on 7 separate occasions. That evidence is now being revealed publicly at the preliminary hearing. David has pleaded not guilty, and his lawyers can now question witnesses and challenge the prosecution's claims. We'll break down all the evidence that's been presented. And first, let's understand the prosecution's overall goal with this preliminary hearing.
Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Hockman. I'm the Los Angeles County District Attorney. Today starts the day of the preliminary hearing of David Anthony Burke, the singer David, spelled D4VD. This preliminary hearing will last approximately 3 to 5 days, at which point we will be seeking to hold David to answer for 3 felony counts of which he has been charged. First-degree murder with special circumstances, the count of lewd and lascivious acts with a 13-year-old, and the count of mutilation of human remains. David will be facing a maximum punishment of life without the possibility of parole, or he is also death penalty eligible. The decision on whether or not...
And they should go for it. They should go for death penalty. If they actually go for the death penalty, regardless of whether California is going through the executions or not, it's going to force the defense attorney's hand in trying to think about how to spare his life more so than get him off, because I don't think they're going to last too long with all this evidence, because they don't have to prove his case as a defense. They just need to create all that reasonable doubt, just like the last content creator Blackie Speaks said. They just need to create reasonable doubt enough to where the jury would be convinced that there is sufficient reasonable doubt. Because it's so heinous, and it's been over a year from September 2025. We're going on August of 2026. It's been almost a year, and he was said to have taken her life April of last year. Unbelievable.
To seek the death penalty has not been made at this point. The point of a preliminary hearing is somewhat different than you actually perceive in the media, whether it's TV or the movies. Because what often happens in TV or the movies is you go from an immediate arrest into a trial. But in our system, and in California in particular, you have an intermediate step. That intermediate step is a preliminary hearing where effectively the...
Dude, that's every state. What are you talking about? We just got to watch the preliminary hearing in Utah.
Prosecution's evidence is going to be tested before a judge, not a jury. The standard that we have to meet is not beyond a reasonable doubt at the preliminary hearing stage. It is probable cause. We are not obligated, nor will we be presenting all the evidence at a preliminary hearing that we will be presenting at a trial to prove David beyond a reasonable doubt guilty of the 3 felony charges of which he has been charged. So at the preliminary hearing, we will call a number of officers. We estimate there'll be over 10 different witnesses, both officer testimony, coroner testimony, and there'll be individual witnesses as well. And again, we can rely on hearsay and other things that won't be allowed to be relied on in an actual trial. The judge at the end of the presentation of the evidence, and again, this is evidence that can be cross-examined.
Awesome.
Let's start with day 1 of the preliminary hearing. Now, to understand the context behind the witnesses that were brought up to speak at the first day of David's preliminary hearing, we got to understand the story that prosecutors were painting in the initial complaint against David. LAPD robbery homicide detectives determined that Celeste and David had actually met in January of 2022 when Celeste was just 11, and they were alleged to have begun a S relation in November of 2023 when Celeste was just 13. By February of 2024, Celeste had went missing, and the sheriff department in...
How would he have met her? When she went to a concert, he just picked her out in the crowd. What are circumstances to how they actually met each other? Was it online or something? Yeah, it's like, what were the... They met online. She was 11. She looked 11. She looked 13. I don't understand. She didn't look like some 40-year-old grown woman. I get these kids are big and adult looking nowadays. It's got to be the food and the water. But she looked 11. She looked absolutely 11. I'm just not, oh my God. Hold on 1 second. Let me, what's going on with the Instagram one? Okay. So for some reason, the Instagram live ended. Well, how does Instagram work with this? This is ridiculous. Okay. All right. I'm just going to remove it. This is annoying. Okay. So they met online Roblox. That's a game? Because he was a gamer. He was playing a game with her or something. And then they met in person somehow. Of all the girls, like, this is my whole thing. He was 18. She was 11. I mean, the initial meet, like the first time he came across her. She was 11. He was 18. What could you possibly say to an 11-year-old? You're like looking at this kid and you're like, hey, little girl, how you doing, little girl? Like, what kind of conversations would he be able to start with her other than talking about a game? He's 18, a grown adult, legal age. She's 11. Does he not have siblings? You can't make this up. And he just one day said, can you come to my house? He preyed on an 11-year-old kid. The first time he saw her, he knew she was 11.
Determined that Celeste and David had actually met in January of 2022 when Celeste was just 11, and they were alleged to have begun a S relation in November of 2023 when Celeste was just 13.
Crazy.
By February of 2024, Celeste had went missing, and the sheriff department in Riverside County, Celeste's hometown, had actually contacted David when she first went missing because they found his number in a phone that belonged to Celeste. During that phone call, David had told authorities that he spoke to Celeste a couple days beforehand, but was unaware that she was an A minor or that she was even reported missing. After this phone call, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department actually went to David's home to conduct a welfare check. And the first witness at the first day of the preliminary hearing was one of the sheriffs that visited David's home during that February 2024 welfare check. They also showed body cam footage of that officer going into David's home, searching it, as well as speaking to him.
Of Celeste, I'll be honest with you, the body cam footage was disappointing. Not in terms of it didn't show much, but it was disappointing.
This is it. Trap Laura Ross. He's been reporting in real time from the courthouse. And they blocked his videos. He didn't even show anything. He was just outside talking like he is now. But he's got like a 10, 11 hour type video on his channel of the entire week of videos that he did in real time outside the courthouse. Because normally, criminal cases like this, they don't let cameras in the courtroom. Which is why it's irritating to know that somehow video evidence in Charlie Kirk's case was leaked out to Candace, of all people. This is why judges don't like that. God, man. Oh, Candace, I hope they charge you with interference.
In terms of, it felt like the officers maybe could have done a little bit more to investigate. They kind of sort of, I don't want to say let David off the hook, but when they visited his property and kind of were asking about this missing minor, it was very surprising. They didn't really put it on him. We heard rumors that they had gone to his property and told him she's 13 and warned him. That's not really what we saw in that footage. I'm not trying to defend David by any means, but they basically went to his property, said, look, we're looking for this girl. Is she here? They searched the property. She wasn't there. David, honestly, he seemed very nervous. And I'm not saying that he wasn't up to nothing dodgy. He did kind of seem a little bit nervous, but he was forthcoming. He said, oh, yeah, I know her. I thought she was 18. She told me that she was 18. Other people trying to tell me she's 13 now. He showed them a picture of her on his phone. He showed them the, alleged. It's been alleged that it's a yearbook photo, but it looked more just like a sort of random picture of her. But that was kind of the first witness who basically, was on the stand and described going to David's property. We saw the body cam footage, and then David's defense, they kind of had a good little moment when they said, well, at no point did you say definitively that she's 13. I'm pretty sure the way that it was worded, he was kind of like, I think she might be 13. It wasn't clear. It wasn't definitive. And it made you think, damn, like, that's not quite what we thought that we was actually going to be hearing. So that one, I'm not going to lie, that it was definitely not good for David, but it was also, there were little holes that his defense poked into it. And they were doing a very good job of poking holes in things.
So they answered the call. David said, I've been on the phone with the cops. And they said straight up, they said, is Celeste here? And it was like the way that they started, it sounded like they was going to play hardball with him. It's like, oh, yeah, how you doing? Yeah. Is Celeste here? And then he's like, nah. He said, they last spoke when I was in Australia. He was like, I was out of the country. I just got back from Australia. I was on tour. I thought he sounded super nervous to begin with. And then he gets a little bit more confidence as the interaction goes on. I'd say David spoke very fast in the body cam footage. They're asking him questions like, when did you last speak? He's like, last week, I just got back from Australia. So I believe he did tell them that he had spoken to her last on the 13th of February. Again, he had that information ready to go, quick time answer. 13th February, like he was quick time with the answer.
Like he rehearsed it.
He explained to them that they met at the end of 2021 on Discord, said outright it was like a video game chat room, and that they'd continue to communicate on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, but mainly on Discord. That's where they met specifically, on Discord through a video game chat room. They basically asked him if he has any tattoos, and I didn't actually hear the response to that. David even offers the cop like a drink from his fridge, and they're not interested. They basically asked, do you know Celeste's cell phone number? He gives it over. He gives several numbers for her, and then basically says, look, the only time I ever met her was on November the 12th, 2023 at the beach. And he said an address where the beach was.
Man, you can't make this up. You met this child at the beach. What? That's not even like a first date. I don't know. Maybe in California. Is that like a first date hangout? You took a minor child to the beach. Are you kidding? Boy, this is something else. Oh, he's gross. Okay, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because he continues to read a little bit more. And Trap Moore Ross has his own channel, so make sure you guys go check him out. He did a full 8-10 hour video. It's the longest one he's ever done.
Sort of inferring, it's like, oh, she told me she was 18, and this yearbook picture of hers going around, and I heard it was taken a year before, and like maybe that was 17. He doesn't say 17, but that's sort of what he's inferring. So he basically says he's tried to contact her. The phone is dead. At one point, he even said, oh, this is like a movie, which is fucking crazy because it's like a movie watching him go through it in trial, to be honest with you.
Now, I might sound like a broken record here, but you have to remember that the point of this preliminary hearing is to present all the evidence to the judge, and the judge must then decide if there's enough evidence for this case to go to trial. During the presentation of all this evidence and all the witnesses coming forward, David's defense team's job is to poke holes in everything that prosecutors show to the judge. Because obviously, if they could show the judge that there's inconsistencies with everything prosecutors are bringing forth, the judge might think that there's not enough of a case to even bring this to trial to begin with. And remember again that David is pleading not guilty. Now, the second witness on day one was actually the robbery homicide detective who was on the scene when Celeste's body was found in the front trunk of David's Tesla. During the hearing, pictures were also shown of Celeste's remains and how they were discovered in the trunk. Now, just a
Oh,
trigger
man, you
warning,
had to
I'm
see
going
that?
to show
Ugh.
a courtroom sketch that
Oh,
depicts
God.
a lot of the images that were shown throughout the hearing, and I will blur out anything that's too graphic. As you can see here, there were pictures shown of the Tesla with the front trunk open, pictures of Celeste's finger that had the shush tattoo on it, all of the stuff that authorities found in David's home throughout their searches, like the burn cage, the chainsaw, the knife, the inflatable pool, all things that...
Chainsaw down here. What in the world? This is not something people buy. Look at it. It's two of them. One's got an orange handle, the other one got a blue handle. What's the difference? I don't know. It's like the same thing, just different colors. This isn't normal things that people like. You got that type of money, you buying chainsaws like that? That's not something people normally just purchase when you don't even cut your own grass. I can guarantee you all, he didn't even cut his own grass. And he bought 2 chainsaws. Like, no one checks his orders and how he's spending money or something. 1 chainsaw is missing. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to bury it somewhere or threw it in the ocean. I mean, he just no respect for human life. Had this girl in bag for over a year. Unbelievable. Parts of this blue pool was found in deep tissue in her body because he cut her up in that pool and it grabbed the pool pieces into her flesh. She looked 11. There's no doubting that. She looked like a little girl.
were allegedly used for mutilation, as well as images that have blurred out of Celeste's decomposed cut body that was in bags in the front trunk of David's Tesla. But like I said, it was still David's defense team's job to poke holes at all the evidence presented. And that's exactly what they tried to do when the robbery homicide detective presented this evidence during the hearing.
That testimony in court, it was honestly just sickening to see the footage of what was found in that car, to hear the testimony of the officer that actually dealt with that. It was just honestly just horrifying. That was extremely bad, and really that was kind of very, very damning. There wasn't really much to defend on that front, but what they did manage to do was the defense pointed out some very, very interesting holes in that basically timeline of when the body was discovered and recovered. They basically pointed out some inconsistencies with the fact that it was kind of a local police department that opened the Tesla, exposed the first bag. It was then the detectives from the robbery homicide division that then came and moved the first bag, discovered the second bag underneath it in the Tesla, and then it was the medical examiner that then came to the scene and was the only person to authorize to touch the body. Now, one point that they made that was very, very interesting was they basically said, why didn't you keep the body bag? They never kept the body bag that Celeste was unfortunately found in. They basically disposed of it, and they disposed of, and it's disgusting to say, I'm so sorry to say this, but the liquefied remains that are inside that bag, they basically said we didn't really have the means to preserve that. That was unpreservable. What we did is we cut the handles off the body bag that might have had DNA on it, and we kept obviously the core remains, but they basically admit we don't have the body bag. I don't know where it is. They sort of said, oh, was it destroyed? And they said, oh, we wouldn't say destroyed, but it was not, we couldn't preserve it. It was just liquefied remains in a bag, in a mesh bag that was just, half a leftover garbage bag. It was not preservable. Now that unfortunately did look quite bad on the prosecution to sort of say, well, this is a really, really important thing. Why didn't you preserve it? And them arguing, well, we couldn't preserve it. It wasn't preservable. Didn't really kind of land for some people. I feel like for a lot of people, it felt like that really wasn't a good enough answer. And it sort of made you think, okay, the
question would be, how do you preserve that? It's been sitting in a trunk of a car in the heat for at least 2-3 months. How do you preserve it? Maybe they should have asked the defense, what are your suggestions on preserving, liquefied remains? Oh, Jesus Christ. How would you do that? Because I don't even see a way to what are we gonna do? We're gonna put it in jars, mason jars or something. How do you preserve that? It was already tainted and ruined. I mean, and do what with it? Ugh. Ew. Oh, the odor. It had to be mind-numbing.
Some inconsistencies here. And I'll be honest with you, I think the prosecution had a pretty hard time when they started talking about all the evidence that was claimed from David's property. Now, there was some pretty about for so long, haven't been used in the dismemberment. That was very, very shocking, to be honest with you, and I feel like I was very, very surprised. And it sounds like whatever that chainsaw that was actually used to do this dismemberment is long gone, apparently. They haven't been able to recover that.
Now, another thing presented...
It might be buried inside of the damn floorboards of his house somewhere. You imagine, like, the stench coming out of that house? I mean, to the point where people were inside of it live streaming and noticed it. And then he tried to excuse it. Ugh.
At the hearing was a bunch of data that authorities extracted from David's phone and other technology devices. Remember that authorities believe David and Celeste had began an S relationship in late 2023. They also alleged that David had actually traveled with Celeste out of country, booking her flight tickets as an accompanied minor. During the hearing, prosecutors showed that while searching David's devices, they were able to discover an email address belonging to David where airline tickets were booked for both him and Celeste.
They were able to do, through a warrant, just extractions from his phone, which apparently was an iPhone 16 Pro, and it was Pro Max, called the Tranquilizer. And this phone, by the way, has never physically been located. And this was the phone disconnected on the 29th.
Wow.
So per Celebrate activity, you know, they were kind of showing us sort of the places that he went. And they were screenshotting some of these places from the infotainment center on the Tesla and matching it up to the iCloud.
There you go.
For example.
So y'all see how the evidence corroborates the other? So you had the phone, and then you had the car data corroborating the geographical points, the locations. That, man, that evidence right there together makes a stronger case.
We had a trip identified in navigation to Santa Barbara and Lake Cachuma, plus a Tesla charge in San Ynez Valley in May of 2025, a month after they...
And Tesla's totally electric, correct? So you got a totally electric car that has a black box in it, like any other vehicle, matching up with the data coming out of the phone, the iCloud. That's how they're able to corroborate. It's the same thing I've been saying with, yes, it's totally electric. Okay, yeah, same thing I've been saying regarding the Tyler Robinson trial. You can't say that Tyler Robinson went to some restaurant 3 hours away if you cannot physically put him there. That's why all that nonsense they're talking about on X is stupid. This is a prime example of where you have the singer David having his cell phone data and the car data, the black box from the vehicle, data points lining up and corroborating each other. So it's giving the same geographical points with the same date and timestamp. That is how you corroborate the evidence to physically put someone at a specific location. If you add video evidence on top of that, especially like if they go to a restaurant and they both captured on video, now you have three main key pieces of evidence corroborating each other that physically puts him in these locations. This is what advancement in technology can do. It can track your whole route. And we bless God for it. That's why this is not hard to believe in any other case. And it's baffling to me why people think that this somehow is not plausible in the Tyler Robinson murder trial. No, it's the same thing. Take the data from his car, his phone, and line it up. And this is what you get, what she's describing right here. This is it.
I believe she was killed. There was another location of interest, a charging station on 729, which is on the way to Santa Barbara as well. And they found surveillance footage from a home nearby when he parked the Tesla on July 29th, 2025, the alleged last time that it was in his possession. And they showed us just multiple angles of him getting out, going into his home, you know, and that's that.
That's how it's done. That's how it's done. This is the same thing they can do in the Tyler Robinson murder trial. We got video evidence, got the car data, we got the cell phone data. There you go. Y'all see how this works now? Now, I don't understand why these morons on X can't seem to understand that in a whole separate criminal murder trial where you're trying to place someone physically at a location. Video evidence, car data, cell phone data. And in Tyler Robinson's case, he also had physical DNA evidence. Come on now.
They talked about getting a search warrant for the home as well, where they went over the evidence that we kind of already knew about. The burn cage, they found that in a box behind the piano. They found a blue iPhone 15 that belonged to David. And, you know, they also said they found a tower computer where there was another email address. And this email address was also connected to the iPhone that, or the iCloud data that he had, and it's follow it, which is FALLIT and some numbers at gmail.com. And they actually found through that email or through that iCloud on the tower computer several flights that David had booked between I think it was LA to Texas and LA to London for both he and Celeste.
Wow.
There was also purchases made under another alias besides Victoria Mendez, Travion Davis, I believe it was. Yeah, also the red Tesla in the garage, they were showing us photos when they were discussing the search warrant. They said that was registered to Robert Morgenroth, and they identified him as David's manager and, quote, personal assistant. I found that to be interesting.
Now, you might also be curious how authorities actually confirmed that the decomposing, mutilated body in the front trunk of a Tesla that belonged to David was actually the body of Celeste. Well, if you guys remember back when it was first uncovered that a body was found in a car that belonged to David, there was massive reporting of this in the news. And at that point in time, on September 10th, about 2 days after the body was uncovered, Celeste's father had actually theorized that it may be his own daughter's body in that car. And so he made the call to authorities, and they confirmed that that was the case.
How they also identified Celeste, Jesus Rivas called LAPD Communications on September 10th after he saw lots of media coverage on the 8th, and he said, look, I think this might be my daughter. And basically, he used his son as an interpreter, or Celeste's brother, and he was able to provide LAPD or the medical examiner's office with her dentist's office so they could, you know, identify the dental records, and it was her. And also, you know, he did say that per Jesus Rivas, that she had 2 different phone numbers, and he gave them to police. And then they also found out that she had a 3rd phone number that no one knew. And when
you got 13, 14-year-old with how many phone numbers? What? Was the one live you did LLC with, what was his name? Shepard? Are you talking about Jared or Gill? Who are you referring to? What was it for Candice? You said Shepard? When was it? Let me know the date. Maybe it'll come to my memory with the date. This right here is, how does this girl have 3 or 4 phone numbers? And then, you know, get in the car and your manager's name is pretty common when you get to that level. It kind of keeps people from finding out your personal information. So I'm not shocked. I'm shocked that the black Tesla was registered in his name. But now he's got it. I think his mom is trying to move assets to her name. what's his name? Who was over talking the panel? Oh, the one I was reacting to with Jay Witt. Is that who you talking about? What were we talking about? Was it Stu Peters? Oh yeah, Stu Peters. He said if you answer the question about Pachuca. No, that was Stu Peters and Andrew Wilson. Oh man. Oh God. Yeah, I think so. No, yeah, we did the watch party on that yesterday. This dude was just saying all kinds of dumb stuff. But yet, the stuff that you hear people like him say, and the other one, the Denigen, whatever. Like I said, they don't know how this stuff works. They don't know how to gather evidence to prove someone physically located at a specific place on a specific date and time. Like, they wouldn't know where to start. You know, you would naturally start with the cell phone. Then you would, find out how they traveled there. Okay, did you fly? You drive? What you do? You go through airports, you're going to be caught on cameras. You're going to have boarding information probably sent to you or your agent's email and phone number or whatever. You're going to have to present your ID when you go to check in at boarding. If you go to an airport, you go rent a car, unless someone else rents it in their name and they're with you, you got to present ID. You go in and get that car, you're going to get caught on the camera. Most places have these cameras, so it's like saying someone was at a restaurant and you don't have any cameras to show any of that. Highly unlikely. Oh, it was so infuriating. I thought you was talking about the one with Gary. The one when Jay went off on that guy. Oh, he said, dude, why are you still talking? Yeah, I thought I was going to hear Deacon say, shut your ass up.
And the detective said her name. He said, did he say his daughter's name? He said, yes, it was Celeste Abigail Rivas Hernandez. That was very sad. It was a very sad moment to hear her full name.
Absolutely horrifying. And to add another layer to the tragedy of this case, the loss of life of this child, is the fact that the crime may have been committed to keep Celeste silent, all for financial gain. Prosecutors had alleged that between text message conversations amongst David and Celeste, it had shown that their quote-unquote relationship was getting turbulent. Celeste began getting jealous of David interacting with other girls, and because of that, she threatened to come forth to authorities on the fact that he was having S relations with an A minor, aka herself. Prosecutors believe that this could have been David's motive for actually taking Celeste's life. And a big reason why the death penalty for David is actually on the table is because this case may have been murder for financial gain. On day 2 of the preliminary hearing, one of Law and Crime Network's reporters were actually sitting right behind David in the courthouse. And she described how David looked, as well as some of the financial related matters that were discussed during day 2 of the hearing. Because again, David's music career was highly successful. He was making not just himself, but a lot of people around him a lot of money. Profit splits are relevant to this case because it was possibly not just David who had the incentive of keeping Celeste quiet so that David's career in music could continue to grow.
I was sitting right behind David this morning. I somehow got a seat in front of where they were seating other reporters. I think it's because I actually walked in a little bit later than everybody else did. So because of that, they had me seated on the end of one of the attorneys' rows in that courtroom, and I was right behind David. He didn't look too great. His hair is grown out. He is unshaven. He's wearing that LA County jail uniform, that orange jumpsuit, and he still has his feet and his waist shackled. He's not wearing handcuffs, though. So he was kind of splayed out in his chair, arms on his armrests. I could see his yellow legal notepad that he had laid out in front of him, So I was trying to take a peek, trying to see if he was taking any notes. He didn't have anything written down. But there definitely were moments this morning during cross-examination of witnesses where he did lean in and talk to his attorneys. The first time I noticed that, it was during cross-examination related to financial management. They were essentially talking about how much money he made through his record deal and how that money was divvied up. Because so many people were involved in this operation. So many people were making money off of him, to put it bluntly. And that's a key part of this case, because murder for financial gain is one of the special circumstances here that makes this eligible for the death penalty.
Now, as far as evidence that was displayed during the second day of the preliminary hearing, we saw more detail into what was found in that Tesla where Celeste's body was stored and discovered. It's absolutely disgusting to imagine, but they actually found dozens of air fresheners in the car, showing that whoever was truly behind this crime was extremely calculated in not just dismembering and packaging the body in compact spaces.
I'm gonna be honest. When I first heard about him in this case, I was like, is he gay? Because I would have thought he was gay. Yeah, I wouldn't even thought he would be interested in girls. I'm just saying.
And I don't want to use the word calculated. I take that back, because in the grand scheme of things, there was nothing calculated about the fact that authorities had already spoken to David a year prior about Celeste being 13, and a year later, she's found in a car that belongs to him. So while calculated is definitely the wrong word, the fact that he was ordering burn cages, pools, shovels, chainsaws, the fact that the car was polluted with air fresheners to try and cover the scent, it shows that there was a deliberate effort to wipe this poor child's memory off the face of the earth, which is so disgusting to think about.
We were hearing testimony from an LAPD criminologist. This was one of the officers called to investigate after the Tesla was towed to one of their tech centers. So we were looking at photos the prosecutor was showing the court of 11 different air fresheners that were found in that Tesla. I mean, Celeste's remains had been in there decomposing likely for months. So to cover up that smell, somebody put nearly a dozen air fresheners, not just.
Here's a case of David the singer who unalived this 13-year-old girl last year, who should be under the jail. He definitely going to cell block 1.
Inside the car, but actually in the front trunk.
I know, right, Jay Wood was not
And
playing.
that's where the cadaver bags with her remains were found. It's not just that this crime was committed, it's that somebody went to truly horrifying lengths, Jesse, to try and cover up their tracks. I could see her parents kind of shrink.
He looked 11. Oh my God! How can you not look at this? See a little girl. Even if she was 13, she still looked like she's younger than 15. She looks like a 13-year-old girl. This 13-year-old girl had to go get an abortion. He gonna get his ass whooped in prison. I'm assuming they have him in isolation somewhere. There's no way he's like sharing a jail cell with people, because they would know who he is. You got this high profile case with this singer. Who knew he was this popular, made all that money and stuff? I never knew. It was never something where, there's some great singers out there that I don't know, but he's not. I mean, if anything else, it seems like he's one of these little flackies for Hollywood. Of all the people to pump out, you get some short little dude that's wearing fingernail polish and shit, and it's walking around here. People knew he was with some 13-year-old kid. She looked 13. No one stopped and asked her, how old are you, girl? Did his mother not ask her how old she is? Because if he was traveling with her, you can't say she was not around his mother. The singer's mother knew that this girl was real. And not one time did she say, what happened to the little girl you was booking out on trips and flights and stuff with? You paying for her to go and travel with you. She's flying out the state with you. And not even in school. What? She wasn't going to school? He took her life last year, April. School was still in session. My God.
Looking into themselves and moving a little bit closer together when those photos came up. There's so many elements of this that are horrifying in ways I don't think we can fully imagine for them.
Now, as far as understanding how David may have thought he would attempt to dispose of any evidence related to the crime if he allegedly committed it, prosecutors had also found an ID card that belonged to Celeste in Santa Barbara County the day after they believe David had taken Celeste's life.
Exactly, Saint.
Around that same time period, David had began doing interviews in promotion of his new album, which ties into prosecutors' theories that the motivation behind taking Celeste's life was in order to protect David's career. David takes her life, disposes of evidence far away in Santa Barbara County, and then goes on to promote his music as if nothing happened. But simultaneously, David's defense team will use this to his advantage to say, if he was really busy taking a child's life and driving cross-country to dispose of the evidence, how could he possibly also have the time and the emotional bandwidth to go on and do interviews and discuss something as lighthearted as his music career? Well, that's where the next witness in the preliminary hearing comes into play.
Someone from the California Highway Patrol testified, right? Can you tell us who that person was and what they testified to?
So this was interesting for me personally, Jesse. It was a CHP officer, California Highway Patrol. He's assigned to the Santa Barbara area. As soon as he walked in and they said that, I thought, oh, here we go. This is going to be the piece of testimony during prelim related to Lake Cachuma up in Santa Barbara County. So I love that area. I love Santa Barbara. I actually took a road trip up there a couple of weeks ago, back in June, because I wanted to check out State Road 154 myself. We all read in court documents that a Caltrans worker back in January apparently found Celeste's ID up there. And prosecutors have been alleging that David took a trip up there the day after Celeste was allegedly stabbed and left to bleed to death.
And none of these people knew. None of them said, hey, there seems to be someone missing in your camp. What happened to that girl with the curly hair? Yeah, Celeste, where is she at? Like, no one asked this when she just mysteriously came up missing. Like, how do you go from I met her at 11 on Discord and then met her in person at 13, and then all of a sudden she's no longer here after flying, booking trips, flying, taking road trips, all this stuff, doing live streams together, and then she just up and out missing. That man, boy, this is something else. I know, right? What type of ID is this? School ID? She couldn't drive. These people knew the tattoo artist did. Yeah, because he tattooed it was the word shush or something on their fingers. There's no way you look at this, whether you're a parent or not. There's no way you're going to look at this photo of this child and not see, okay, yeah, no, she looks young. She looks like a little girl. She taking pictures like little girls do. Man, you can't make this up.
He allegedly drove up there in his own car to dispose of evidence. So this morning, the CHP officer testified that he was called to the scene after that Caltrans worker found the passport card. We actually saw a photo of that passport card. We saw a photo of exactly where, just off the roadway, it was reportedly found. And then we heard some back and forth where defense attorneys cross-examined him and asked, was there any traffic control? Do you know if it was found face up or face down? Was it buried under anything? Did it just rain a day or two ago? So there are questions about how exactly it ended up there. But it was very interesting to hear from a witness who was actually called to that scene after I drove up there myself because I was curious about where, off the roadway, how close to the lake this could have happened.
And the defense is questioning exactly how that passport card would have gotten there, that there were maybe other means other than David allegedly tossing it?
Absolutely. It sounds like they're setting up an argument where they could say that it was washed over there, by rainwater. It did just rain, I think, a day or two before it was found by that Caltrans worker beginning of January of this year. So this is months after the body was found last September. And this is more than half a year after she died last April. So there are a lot of questions.
Took her life in April. She found in September last year. I'm going to fast forward a little bit through this because I want to make sure, we get to, at the very least, the last day. All right. But I encourage all of you to go on Rapaholics channel and check out this video. It's almost 2 hours, like an hour 44 minutes long. But for the sake of brevity, I definitely want to he goes day by day with the preliminary hearings. So day 1 to day 5, and you can see the timestamps. Well, let's go down a little bit to closer to day 5.
Different, but all we do is be intimate and hang out. I want more for myself. David said boundary setting is terrible.
Let me go back a little bit.
She asks him nearly the same question, and they have the same conversation. And then there's no communication until November of 2024, where Celeste says, I literally was intimate with you daily for almost a year straight. And David says, you treat this like it's the first breakup. It's the 8th time. Now, I didn't have access to any text communication where it showed they were fighting or breaking up, but David's implying here that in this 2 or 3 year time span that they allegedly knew each other, they had already broken up and gotten back together 8 times. In December, they text again, and I'm not going to show you. It's more intimate stuff where basically Celeste regrets that she saw David again since they were supposed to be broken up, but they still were intimate with each other. And David basically ends that interaction by saying, this happens every time you initiate and I just go with it. You ask me to be your boyfriend. I just follow your lead. In March of 2025, Celeste would basically try and cut David loose, saying, we can be online friends, but not in person. I just want to move on. David said, okay. Celeste said, this isn't happening. I feel like we can't be in a balanced relationship. Maybe if things were different, but all we do is be intimate and hang out. I want more for myself. David said, boundary setting is terrible. Celeste said, it's more than that. And that concluded all the text conversations back and forth between David and Celeste that the prosecution had showed on day 4 of the preliminary hearing. There was a lot more interactions that we'll get to later in this video that took place on Monday, July 27th, the day that the judge decided this case is going to trial. But in the meantime, I want to take a look at some of the reporters who were actually in the courthouse that day that all these text messages were shown, and show you guys some more info that they had firsthand of that courtroom hearing, other evidence that was displayed, and David's reaction to all of these alleged text messages that took place between him and Celeste throughout all of these years.
This was actually the first instance, Chris, during this preliminary hearing where it seemed to me like David was actively engaged in his own defense. Today was the first time I actually noticed him using the pen or pencil in front of him and that yellow legal notepad that I keep on peeking at, trying to see if he's taking any notes. Before today, I haven't seen him writing anything down, and I've got an eye on him at all times just to see how he's reacting to what's being said about him, his actions. Nothing before today, not a single thing written down. But today, as they were talking about the photos found on his phone and the text messages recovered from his iCloud account, I did notice him hunching over and starting to jot something down. I did notice him having
Came out of his
whispered
phone.
conversations with his attorney.
This stuff came out of his phone. What is that? Now he want to take notes. You can't make this up. The parents, I think the parents were was it Mindy? One of you all said that they were immigrants. They were not citizens. And they didn't speak English. So they had to use the sibling to help report her to the police when they found the car. But they had stated that she ran away from home a few times. And it's like, well, you got some 18, 19-year-old out here telling you, hey, come over to my house and come hang out with me. I mean, if that's not the epitome of young and gullible and impressionable, I don't know what is. You don't think some 12, 13-year-old girl would want to go and hang out with, what looks like a grown man, except he's short and stupid, and to go hang out with him when he's a famous singer? Like, I can't imagine it. I cannot imagine it. There's no way she would have been able to leave my house like that. We don't know. Crazy. That they may not have said any due to possible money she brought home to the house. Probably. Maybe he was giving her money to help with whatever she had going on, and the family was just taking the money. Her mom started locking her in her room, but he paid a kid $1,000 to sneak a phone to her and then just kept on luring her out. Wow. Hey, Adrian, how you doing? What's going on? This is insane, man. What does a 13-year-old know about having a relationship? Exactly. These text messages are crazy. She basically saying, I don't want to keep being your buddy, your ex-buddy. And he's like, yeah, the boundaries is insane. What do you mean? You can't imagine what a conversation with these two would be like. He's 21. That means last year he was 20. She 14. They sitting here having conversations like grown adults, like she pays bills. What? Oh. Listen, let me tell you something. If I had a little girl, her father it would have not even been a thought where my child at. He would have known. Oh, she ain't leaving his house. You're not getting the room with the windows. You ain't sneaking out of here. Oh my God. And parents, we got to remember, you got to monitor still what our kids see you on the internet. Yeah, I mean, lurkers come in every version. Monitor what your kids doing online. When you pay the phone bill, they don't really listen. It's not, oh, this mom, but it's my phone. But yeah, I pay the bill on it. Let me tell you something. I will stop paying the bill on it, and you would just have a phone. Good luck to that. Because I mean, we can't go there. Like, I had to teach my kids that. We put time restraints on our phones, on our kids' phones. My youngest son still has it. They got time restraints. We need to know what you're doing with this. Going on inappropriate websites, I get on my kids all the time. Don't download any old game, any old app. Don't do all that because you don't know what you're bringing onto this device. You could be downloading a virus and they're waiting to get our personal information. You have to still monitor and manage what your kids see on the internet. I get that it's tempting when your kids out and you got work, you're doing this, you're doing that, the kids on the phone, they kind of occupied. But put some restraints on it. Cut that damn phone off at 8:00 p.m. They got school. Child, I didn't get my first phone till I was 18, and it was a track phone. I had to buy minutes. If you don't know what a track phone is, you're not old enough. Track phone from Motorola. You had to buy minutes. So I didn't have time to just sit on the phone all day anyway. It was minutes to call and to get text messages out. That's about it. I don't even think I could take photos with it. We had a minute phone, track phones. Oh, man. Yeah, there you go. That was my first phone. I remember track phones. I had my first phone at 18. 18. Like, I went to college and had my grandmother gave me her phone, her cell phone. And it wasn't even one of those phone phones. It was like a whole phone. Cell phone was like big back then. And you couldn't fold it or flip it or none of that. You could do none of that. And the little phone bill was like $29.99 or something like that with Sprint. We didn't have no $1,000 phones. What you mean? I would be mad to have to buy a new track phone. And then you got to still buy minutes for it. Boy, that was such a gimmick. We got conned and scammed, y'all. I would drop $30, $40 for 20, 30 minutes of talking. You know that's not right. No math in that at all. It's like, how much am I spending a minute? Crazy stuff. And then when T-Mobile first came out, Sprint, and then you had Verizon and AT&T, they were all, man, I mean, it was ridiculous. And that $29.99 phone plan was like, it was just the gift that kept on giving. Because I'm like, okay, instead of me spending $30, $40 on minutes, let me just get a plan. And back then, the phones were very big and bulky looking. But boy, I took care of that phone. I couldn't do a whole lot with it, but the $30 a month, all I had to do was send out calls and text messages. I was good. Yeah, you can use them minute phones up in a hot second. Track phone, no, they scammed everybody. They scammed everybody. Can't make this up. We're going to wrap this old up, y'all, because we got the next live covered up. I was going to do a drop the link type of thing, but I'm going to have to change that up because I got to cut grass this evening.
At one point, this was when, and this was really tough. This was actually what prompted
I know, right?
the victim's mother to start crying and both of her parents to walk out of the courtroom flanked by their attorney. But when they were describing the incredibly explicit images of David and Celeste engaged in various types of sexual activity found on David's phone, I noticed David losing his composure a little bit. The entire time that I've been watching him in court during this hearing and the status conferences before this, he has been very still, very composed, staring straight ahead, responding when spoken to, and not giving away much with his body language or his facial expressions. Today, when they were talking about the photos, when they were talking about his pics, you could see him starting to fidget. It was like he was shrinking in his seat. He looked down at one point. I could see his right leg jiggling up and down. And I'm really curious what he wrote down. Really curious what he shared with his attorneys during that
Why are they pulling these phones out, these photos out my phone? I promise you I was just cold. It's not always that way. Yeah, I can throw out a few things. God, they're going to tear him up in prison.
Change. Because it wasn't just one photo or two that LAPD Detective Corey Farrell described on the stand. It was a series of photos, probably dozens. it got to a point where there were so many descriptions. They were so
I haven't, Adrian.
explicit. You can see in my notes, Chris, I actually stopped describing them one by one. And I just started grouping them into categories, of genitalia, the two of them engaging in sexual intercourse. The list goes on.
I know it looks like a baby dill pickle, but that ain't all. Fat means greasy. I mean, he probably knew what he was saying. He going to hell. Oh, this idiot is going to hell. He's a demon. He sat there still all week, and then all of a sudden, the D-pics come up, and he got to try to explain himself. What you explaining? What are you writing now? Like, all the time, you could have been taking some notes. What the hell? His attorney should have been like, this is not the time to be telling me nothing. What you mean, baby carrots? I don't care. What? What are you writing now? This is about his pride and ego. His little feelings were hurt. That's all that is. Oh, celery sticks, you say? Oh, okay. What?
And on that portion of testimony went on for much longer than I expected it to. We have not even gotten to cross-examination of this witness yet.
It's very interesting because in my previous video, I showed you guys how David was pretty much expressionless the entire time that the prosecution was mainly detailing the state that they found Celeste's body in the front trunk of David's Tesla. And that really speaks to his character. If this was someone he was truly talking to so heavily for all of these years, right, manipulating her into being in an inappropriate relationship with him, it's insane to think that when prosecutors were showing him and the judge these pictures of her body completely lifeless in a trunk of a Tesla that belonged to him, his face showed no emotion. But yet when they start showing these intimate photos and text messages between David and Celeste, that's when he starts showing a reaction on his face. And speaking of Celeste's cause of death, many people wondered why it took so long for prosecutors to not just arrest David, but determine a cause of death. And they actually explained the reasoning for that during this hearing.
There's been a big question about cause of death in this case. We know something horrific happened to this young woman, her body dismembered, according to police. What was the piece of information you saw come out of this? Piece of information that came out of this just related to how we know Celeste died at this point?
So there was a lot of buzz around this autopsy that was conducted last fall after the body was found, and it took about 3 months for them to actually release their final findings. And we learned today that's because they had to do some ancillary testing. Essentially, this deputy medical examiner, he was one of 2 people involved in doing the autopsy. They wanted to wait for toxicology testing to come back to confirm that she didn't die from an overdose. They wanted to know that before releasing this report and finalizing their finding that it was, in fact, penetrating injuries, multiple penetrating injuries that killed her.
Good.
So, Dr.
So he used the knife. Yeah, this poor baby. I mean, you got to imagine now, your 13, 14-year-old daughter, life taken away by this clown. This piece of shit.
Say that that's the case.
We don't know that for sure. And I think defense attorneys made a point of underscoring that several times. That is one of the elements of this first-degree felony murder charge that is interesting, that is different. And if he is convicted, there could be a sharp instrument enhancement. I believe in the state of California that could tack on an additional consecutive year. But those 3 additional special circumstances, that makes this murder case eligible for the death penalty. Here's what else the deputy medical examiner doesn't know for sure. And defense leaned really hard into all of this on cross. They don't know which penetrating injury occurred first. There's one on the victim's abdomen, and there's one on her lateral left chest. So one is associated possibly with liver damage, the other possibly with rib damage and diaphragm damage. Deputy Emmy can't say which one happened first. He can't say definitively whether or not they may have happened seconds apart. He cannot say which one caused her death. He cannot say how long it may have taken Celeste to die from either one of those injuries. There's so much we simply don't know. And that created a gap for one of the defense attorneys to ask something that we have not heard yet in this case. She asked this witness, this deputy medical examiner, if he could rule out that Celeste may have inflicted both of these stab wounds on her own. And he said, based on his findings in this autopsy, that was not something that he could definitively rule out.
Why would she go ahead and do that on her own? What? Oh, they gonna try to do this? They really gonna go this? They're gonna try this angle of, oh, she stabbed herself because she didn't want to lose him in this relationship, even though she's the one that sent the text saying, I can't do this anymore. Like, what? So she gonna go all the way over to his house just to do this to herself, when she could have went anywhere and did this to herself? Boy, this is insane. I can't believe they're trying to even. Oh man, I can see it now. This is the angle the defense attorney is gonna try to take. Maybe she was suicidal. What do you mean? She was 13. If anything, she could have, if she would have said, okay, we're done with this because I can't keep doing this with you. And he telling her come back over to the house. Why would she do that? Why would she go there just to do that to herself? And no one who's thinking along the lines of self-harm or self-harm are going to go out of their way to do all of that. They would just do it at home. Unless you go somewhere where you don't want anyone to find you. But he wanted her to come back to his house. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Like, why would he say, have her come over there again? Why? She sent him a text saying, I can't keep doing this. You just want to be with me first and all this stuff, and that's it. And I'm tired of it. I want more. Don't want to give me more? Cool. We'll just be friends. I'm going to keep living. Why would he want her to come back over there if it was not for some nefarious purpose? And why would she agree just to go out there to do something to herself? Man, it's the stupidity for me. You got to still use logic in these cases. There's no common sense in that.
Following that line of questioning, though, I turned around and I could see a couple people, glancing at each other, eyebrows raised. It looked and felt to me like people watching this line of questioning felt like it may have been bordering on the absurd. It may not be something a jury would believe.
Bordering the absurd? No, she jumped into absurdity. The defense counsel jumped into absurdity head first. Girl, you all the way down there. You down there in that absurdity. You trying to take everybody into some obscure alternate reality. What do you mean? The absurdity of this is mind-numbing. And I'm glad that this was called out for what it is. The judge should have been like, counsel, stop. You trying to turn my courtroom into kangaroo court. Not in the mood. That is absolutely absurd. Yeah, I'm going to take his invite to go back to his house after I just told his ass, I want to break up. And I want to be left alone. I'm going to move on because you don't want to do anything. You're not trying to be in a real relationship. And then of all things, he talking about, yeah, come back over here. What you mean? just somehow she could end up doing something to herself with a knife. Man, it is no logic. It's a waste of trip, waste of time. And my question would be, did he put some in her drink to make her more lucid and to be unable to fight back? Because I haven't heard yet any defense wounds, like any, scratches or anything on him. I haven't heard anything about that. And let's not forget, not only did he not get her any help, if she would have done that, he probably would have called 911 and got help. But he didn't get her any help, and then he mutilated her. He cut her up with a chainsaw. He ordered chainsaws and a pool and all these things to get rid of her. You gonna do all that when they do that to themselves? Stop it.
Believe. Let's map that out for a second. So in other words, and this is based on what we saw this week from the defense, they are potentially building the argument, if this goes to trial, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Celeste would have come over to his place.
Millions of dollars.
Something happened. She killed herself or had an overdose.
Oh
David panicked and tried to get rid of her body. I mean, is that something that you see the building blocks for, even though they've tried to, because remember, one of the most significant things I think the defense has been trying to do is saying, well, all these alleged purchases, the chainsaws, the laundry bags, the body bag, was all after she allegedly died. So it's not like he planned to kill her. Am I understanding that that's maybe the building?
It's still a desecration of a body. He still failed to seek help, medical treatment. He didn't call 911. First of all, it's not as easy as people think it is to be able to get that type of penetrating wound self-inflicted into your chest, the rib area, diver. You got to go through bone and that tough muscle and cartilage. The abdomen on the side is one thing, but then how deep you really going to try to get yourself if you're trying to take yourself out? Those are just not even common areas you're going to go for with a knife. You're going to go for major arteries, wrist, neck, to that extent. Maybe inner thigh, where the chance of you bleeding out is like 99%. That's just, it's unusual spots. It's stupid. And then he takes time to say, I'm just going to dispose of her. I'm not even going to call 911 because she did this to herself. Let me go ahead and cut her up and put it in the trunk for the next forever until they find me. And then he just kept living. He didn't report her missing. He didn't call her parents and say, your daughter over here, like, I'm trying to keep her from stabbing herself. Something's going on. People knew that they were together, that he was spending time with her. He couldn't call those people over there. This girl over here trying to stab herself, man, come over here. Why be afraid to call 911 if you have nothing to do with it? Why be afraid to get help? Take her to a hospital. Drop her off. He could have put her in a car, drove her to the hospital, and dropped her off. Why you didn't do that? It's madness.
Blocks of where they may go as a potential defense.
Jesse, I don't know if that's where the defense is actively trying to go. I think this is their opportunity during this preliminary hearing to kind of test out different lines of questioning, right? See what sticks.
How irritated the judge
See where the biggest openings.
Courtroom artist is on point with it. Look at her facial expression. Like, you dumbass. Why that's the look of a judge. It's like, man, it is too hot for this shit. She's looking at her like, did you just ask that BS? Can't be for real, counselor. Counselor. What? I know. Oh, no. Boy, that facial expression is everything here. This judge said, I am not for play. Hell you mean? So he couldn't call 911 to take her to the hospital? He could have taken to the hospital and dropped her off and left her there. And registered her in as Jane Doe. Called his mama, said, can you get her to her mama? I understand they don't speak English or anything, but can one of y'all facilitate that so they can go to the hospital and pick her up? Why he didn't do that? So he's just gonna be like, well, I guess she decided to do this herself. Let me cut her up. What? I'll put his ass underneath the cell and be done with this. You know, they should seek the death penalty. Go for it.
This might be for them to just create more gaps in the prosecution's case. I don't believe that line of questioning is going to go anywhere.
No.
But here's how they laid it out this morning. Marilyn Bednarski was the one asking Dr. Grant Ho these questions. She wanted to know first, is it helpful for somebody doing an autopsy to maybe have information about whether the decedent has a mental health history? Is it helpful to know?
He said it, Jim. One of y'all said it right here. He probably told her that she wanted to unalive herself. This it right here. I wouldn't be surprised if he put something in her drink so she couldn't really fight back. Because, you know, the human body is stronger and tougher than we give it credit for. And now he's trying to play this angle of, well, you know, she wanted to do this to herself because I didn't want to be in an actual relationship. And then she was trying to use, you know, what we had against me. Because, I mean, how do you can't sit here and deny that abortion you paid for. And I can see him trying to tell his attorney, yeah, you know, she was thinking about, you know, she had ideations. Okay. And you didn't go get her help? Like, typically the conversation doesn't end there. So if you make a claim like that, the next question is going to be, well, if she did something herself, why didn't you call 911 or take her to the hospital? Why go through all the lengths you went through to get rid of her? You up here dumping out evidence and body parts and being left in trunks and all this stuff. Why do all of that if she did it to herself? It's not going to go anywhere because there's no logic in that. And then he's the one that wanted her to come back to his house. He ordered for a driver to go and get her and arrange for her to come back to his house. I'm just that's a theory that, you know, just to keep her, because she's 13, 14 years old, she's not going to just let him stab her like that and not fight back. I would not be surprised if she was not drugged up. And then it just made it easier for him. I think once she got up in that house, he caught her off guard. That's it. Once he got her in the house, he probably got her upstairs in the room or something like that. He caught her off guard. Boy, you can't make this stuff up. And she threatened to you know, put him out there. But he's trying to flip it like, and if that's what they're going to go for, boy, the judge is probably not even going to permit that. Because you're talking about logic is gone. Because then, you know, if that be the case, what do you have to hide? Why do you take her to the hospital? He could have literally dropped her off. She's a minor. He could have said to the doctor, she's 13 years old, going on 14 or whatever. Please get the social worker and CPS involved so they can make sure she get back to her mom. Why didn't he do that? That's what happens when you try to create loopholes. There's always going to be questions around it. That's logical questions. Is it just going to really just render that moot? Or that's something else. He sweet talked her over again. And of course, 13-year-old is going to believe him. And then we know the rest. Exactly. I'm not going to invite you to come back to my house if you're talking as if you have ideations to unalive yourself. Nope. You can't. No, I'm going to take you to a mental health facility and you can get some help. You 13, 14 years old, you know, that's young to be thinking about that. I don't think that's the case. I don't get anything out of the messages that we've seen so far that they've released where she had any ideations of doing that. And for the defense attorney, the defense counsel to try to take this approach in the preliminary goes to show that she intends on taking this approach in the actual trial hearing. I would not be shocked if she tried to ask those questions in a different way. But I hope the judge tells her, counselor, let me tell you something. Not in my courtroom. Logic cannot be devoid in the courtroom. You still have to use logic and common sense. It is called reasonable doubt. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You cannot think unrealistically and unreasonable in these murder cases. Not when you talking about this mutilation and she was in a trunk for 3 or 4 months in the heat. No, from April until September. That's like 5, almost 6 months. No. Her self-harm, no. Nope. Because the areas to which she was penetrated with the knife, that does not explain, she wanted to do this, but I just decided to cut her up. What? That's really extreme. And he has zero emotions, no sympathy, no guilt, no nothing. He feels nothing. It's like a demon.
If they are suicidal, is it helpful to know
Child,
if
no.
they are habitual drug users? So to each of those questions, Dr. Ho answered, potentially. So then she asked him, did you have any conversations with the decedent's relatives to explore those characteristics? He did not.
No, why would he need
Then
to do
she
that?
proceeded to ask about the injuries, right? The documented injuries, these penetrating wounds, the disruption to one of her ribs, the damage noted on her liver. And the defense wants to know, can you definitively link those observations that were made during the autopsy to what you see on the overlaying skin? And do you know exactly how that occurred? Are you able to definitively report that somebody else caused those injuries? And I think the broad answer to all of this is the advanced state of decomposition precludes a lot of definitive information. The deputy ME simply cannot say how this happened or who did this to her.
So with all this in mind, with us still being unsure of how specifically Celeste lost her life, let's dive into the next day of the preliminary hearing where prosecutors show text messages between David and Celeste on the night that Celeste had allegedly been believed to have lost her life. Remember that the last text interaction we saw between David and Celeste occurred in March of 2025, where Celeste had basically told David that they can only be friends online. Well, now we get to April 23rd. 2025. So before we see these text messages, David walked into the courtroom appearing relaxed and in good spirits. He smiled and whispered with his defense attorney, Blair Burke, and at one point he seemingly joked with the courtroom clerk about water. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman resumed Detective Farrell's testimony by establishing that David and Celeste remained in regular...
What is it with these monsters going to court and smiling and laughing like this is not serious? What is it with this? Yeah, Tyler Robinson smiling and grinning and laughing with the attorney. What the hell is it? Man, this is a murder trial. Are you serious? Oh man, he's soulless. They are so soulless.
Contact through mid-March 2025 and exchanged between 8,000 to 9,000 text messages before her passing. Silverman focused on conversations
9,000.
in this hearing from April 22nd to 26th, 2025, which was the time period leading to the loss of Celeste's life. And these messages also included discussion about David's friendship with another woman by the name of Aisha Collins. Beth Silverman then walked through the April 23rd conversation in which David and Celeste coordinated an Uber ride to David's home. The messages showed that David ordered the ride at Celeste's request, confirming the pickup location and tracking the driver's arrival. At 5:07 p.m., David asks, "Why do I have to show you everything I get?" Celeste says, because I had your baby in me." Celeste says, "Get an Uber, queen." David said, "Getting it." Celeste then texts David the name of the street that her family was living on at the time to call the Uber to. David tells her the Uber is 1 minute away, then says the Uber's here. Then at 8:39 p.m., Celeste says, "Okay." Then says, "Girly pop, I'm almost there. Open your door if you're home." David says, "I got you." And at this point in the courtroom, there's no emotion, no movement from David. At 10:10 p.m., David says, "The gate is open, the door is unlocked." And at 10:31 p.m., David says, "Uber said you're here. Where you at?" This is where it gets dark. After this, David repeatedly texted Celeste, asking where she was. His final messages were sent around 11:41 p.m. that night. The prosecution then shifted to digital evidence. Detective Farrell testified Uber records showed that the ride actually arrived to David's home at 10:10 p.m. Prosecutors...
Y'all, criminals are so stupid. Did he forget that the Uber driver is a whole nother person? And that Uber would give up that evidence regarding the Uber ride? And that prosecutors would confirm that she was dropped off with the Uber driver? Like, are you serious? So the Uber driver's car has a black box in it, just like these new age cars all do, where you can get geographical data regarding coordinates, date, and timestamps of where that vehicle went. And their cameras, because he has cameras around his house, showing Celeste getting out of the Uber car, going to his house with date and timestamps of the video footage. Criminals are so stupid. How did you forget all of that evidence could be presented?
Also introduced evidence regarding cell phone movements, David's Tesla, and a photograph of the Tesla's navigation screen showing Santa Barbara destinations, including Lake Cachuma and a Tesla supercharger in Santa Ynez. And remember that Celeste's ID, her driver's license, had been found by a random bystander in Santa Barbara very shortly after this.
Me too, Jay.
Then it was David's defense team's turn to question all the text messages, all the evidence that the prosecutors had presented. His lawyer had established that through text message conversations, Celeste had represented herself as both 16 and 18 at different times, and noted that the defense had prepared their own compilation of raw iCloud message data. Basically, aside from all the text messages that the prosecutor showed the judge during these hearings, David's defense team also had other messages between David himself and Celeste that they also wanted to show in defense of David. And with that included...
If you had to get a passport, wouldn't you have to present a birth certificate? Especially for minors? Because, I mean, theoretically, she wouldn't have a driver's license. She was 13 years old. So he got her a passport. How would he have been able to do that unless she had her birth certificate? Or they lied like hell? Which one was it? What is girly pop? I don't know. She called him girly pop. I don't know any real men that would want somebody calling them girly pop. Okay, birthday cake. Bye, Swiss roll. What? Oatmeal cream pie. It's so weird. So weird. That's why I wondered if she knew about his boyfriend. He had a boyfriend. I can believe that. I told you I thought he was gay. I'm just being honest. I thought he was gay.
Some conversations that took place between April 22nd and 23rd, pointing to messages where Celeste threatened to unalive David and ruin his music career, contact his mother, leak damaging information, and spread information to people in his personal life. And the detective had agreed that those messages did exist. David's lawyer then questioned the detective about the extent to which David and Celeste's relationship was known to other people before April of 2025, when prosecutors believe her life was taken. The detective testified that Celeste's parents, her relatives, her friends, and David's mother were all aware of their relationship. The detective also confirmed that
That's right here. Here you go. Here you go. Celeste's parents, relatives, friends, and Burke's mother were aware of the relationship. There is no way you're getting a passport for a minor child that's not yours without a birth certificate. And even if it is yours, you need a birth certificate. How else do you prove who she is? She would have to get fingerprints. You can't make this up. This is so weird. What the hell? And I knew his mother knew. The idea that she's moving assets and money and property around in her name. Yeah, okay. Somebody had to. Do you all think that he had help when he was using chainsaws to cut up? Did you all think he may have had help with that? I cannot imagine that being a one-man job. You don't even like he would be able to like literally last that long to do that type of work, like to do something like that. It's more difficult than, people understand it to be. The human body is pretty tough. He was going to burn her. Not that he tried it. He was pondering burning her in a burn cage. This is the lengths he went through to get rid of her. I mean, he bought a heavy tool. He bought saws, electric saws, a whole pool, a kiddie pool. It's hard to believe he did this on his own. I'm not saying it's implausible, but it is difficult to believe that he did this on his own. I wonder, do they have video cameras of his mama showing up there the day of or the next day after he, took her life, allegedly? I wonder if she showed up or anybody. It is hard to believe he did all of this on his own. And then all her people knew too. And think about this. If they were, illegal immigrants and they didn't have citizenship, of course, they're not going to want to bring unwanted attention to themselves. But it makes it easier for them to be bribed, to be paid off. Because they didn't even speak English. They had to get a sibling to help report to the police about her being missing and about the father feeling this was his daughter. And if he knew that she was going over there, that she was looked like skipping school and everything else, then yeah. If you know this is his car and you're aware of that relationship, more than likely you knew this whole time she was missing, there was a chance that he did something to her. Question is, why didn't he, as the father, go over there and whoop his ass? Because I don't know any father that would not have whooped his ass. He would have got his ass whooped. He's not that tall, he ain't that big. He would have caught it. You can't make this up. He also confirmed Burke attended church with Celeste's family, spent time with them at malls and amusement parks, and that Celeste's parents signed a notarized travel consent form allowing Burke to take her to London in September 2024. See this? Her parents had to sign something so she could get a passport to travel. I told y'all.
David attended church with Celeste's family, spent time with them at malls and amusement parks, and that Celeste's parents signed a notarized travel consent form allowing David to take Celeste to London in September of 2024. This was all found through text message evidence. The detective also testified that Celeste attended Coachella and David's performances with people in David's inner circle. David's lawyer then seemed to be insinuating that Celeste was abused towards David, pointing to one of the messages that was sent from David to Celeste, saying, "Oh my gosh, I will unalive you. She was in my damn seat. I will tell my dad so many freaking lies about you, and I will end your career and your life. I will damage anything." David's team also focused into
not
Celeste's
abusive.
arrival at David's house because there's a lot of questions there that are left unanswered. The detective testified that investigators determined David was playing a virtual reality game with other people while Celeste was traveling in the Uber on the way to David's house. He also agreed that there were no eyewitnesses who saw Celeste exit the Uber or enter into David's property. There was no surveillance video showing either Celeste or David outside the home, and no witness who observed what occurred during the roughly 20-minute period that investigators believe encompassed Celeste's passing. The detective also further acknowledged that the Uber driver who drove Celeste to David's home allegedly had no independent recollection of the ride and could not confirm the exact time that she was dropped off. So all in all, David's defense wrapped up their arguments by saying that prosecutors had not proven the three quote-unquote special circumstances that can make the alleged crime more serious. Number one, lying in wait. Celeste allegedly chose to come over while David was gaming with friends, so the defense says there is no proof that he planned a surprise attack on her. Number two is financial gain. There is no clear evidence that he acted to protect his future music career or to save himself from getting prosecuted if she went to authorities and revealed that he was in a relationship with her. No evidence, all speculation. Number three, in a witness. There is no evidence that Celeste threatened to report him to the police. Overall, the defense said that the case relies only on indirect evidence and does not clearly show what David was doing when Celeste was allegedly unalived. But the prosecutor began arguing the exact opposite, saying that all three circumstances were actually connected. Number one, when it comes to lying in wait, even if Celeste arranged the meeting, aka, coordinated the idea of going to David's house, she did not know what David allegedly planned. Prosecutors say that he expected her arrival and deliberately put her in a vulnerable position. In terms of financial gain, Celeste allegedly threatened his rapidly growing multi-million-dollar music career. Prosecutors argue that silencing that threat protected his image and future earnings. Number three, unaliving a witness. Celeste had allegedly threatened to expose their relationship. The prosecutor says that David unalived her to prevent a report that could have led to criminal charges, even though no case existed at that point. The prosecutors basically believe that Celeste, with growing anger and resentment towards David, had threatened to reveal that they had been in a relationship to the world and to authorities. And that would, of course, compromise David's lucrative music career. And because of that, he agreed for her to come over. And when she did, he unalived her with the intention of keeping her silent so that his secret wouldn't be exposed to the world. And with that, the judge said, this thing is going to trial. Thankfully, the much-deserved justice and closure for Celeste's family will have the chance to be attained in a court of law. Rest in peace to Celeste.
That's it, y'all. Man, woo, this is crazy. Man, when I say when school starts again, y'all pray over your kids. Teach your kids to pick wisely. Even when it comes down to friendships, help your kids understand everybody's not your friend. Everybody's not your friend. These kids at school, they're your classmates. Some of them don't always have your best interests at heart. That's man. This is something else. Adrian said, was the mother in charge of anything when it comes to his career? She's in charge about everything. He's now moving like assets and stuff, under her name. So with him being, right now in jail with no bail, she's definitely taking control of a lot, with his properties, houses, cars, stuff like that, his estate. Yeah, she is named as is she named as the RA or manager? I thought she was a registered agent. It's pretty much the same thing with that. But yeah, He's shifting everything to her, and I think too he's doing it because he doesn't want to have all that money connected to him. Because if they decide to file a wrongful death lawsuit, which I think that's what they're going to do, you know, he's got to be able to show that he's got all his income. But hiding it underneath the mother, what they need to do is name her as a co-defendant. That way you knock out two birds with one stone. So the mother was the mastermind, probably. I think she went there. Because that's one of the questions most people would ask. Did he have help? Did he have help? And then because YouTube is dumb. Nikki B, YouTube is dumb. They will sit here and find any reason to limit ads or to block a video. Child. So it's YouTube. They don't like words. It's so crazy. But I think David's mother knew what happened and went over there and helped him. And now she's taking over with his estate, with the money, with property, cars. She wasn't like oblivious. And I'm like, think about it. If he's making all this millions of dollars, and they weren't like struggling or broke anything, he was homeschooled. But all this money that he's making now, it's like, of course she would want her son to keep making money. The fact that he did a whole album between last year, September, and this year, until he was arrested, it speaks volumes. It's like, dude, did that not bother you one time? What you did? And she just missing MIA. Her family knew that you were in her life. You went with them to barbecues and amusement parks and blah, blah, blah. You took her to London with you. And you can't tell them what happened to their child. All of a sudden out of nowhere. Child. He made the millions. Make sure you all have that conversation with your kids. Guard your daughters and your sons. You got teachers out here going after the teenage boys now. Child. I had to tell my boys, no, it is not cool if you out here hanging out with your teacher. I don't care how she look. It ain't cool. Because they dad see him make comments. Where were these teachers at when I was in school? Like, shut up. That's stupid. Like, you know what? You and that teacher gonna go down. Can't make this up. So yeah. She saw her cash cow going. Yeah, now that cash cow is a moo and in jail. Cow goes moo. And so will he. Debo and them will not be kind to him. I can't make this up. All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. Oh my God. This murder trial is going to be something else. We will continue to report on it here. The Lady Luck Club with Sweet Tea. Updates to this case. And any other true crime stories that we cover, cases that we cover, are going to be done here on the Lady Luck Club with Sweet Tea. So make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel for the true crime, for this case update. It's so gruesome. It's hard for me to put this on the main channel either way. But get all the updates and to keep up with the murder trial updates, come here to the Lady Luck Club with Sweet Tea, you all. We got another live I'm running behind for. But if you can, join me on the next live stream. We're just going to go over a few videos and stuff like that. It's not going to be long. If you cannot, thank you so much. Hit the like button. Hype this video up at the conclusion of the live stream, because we want YouTube to know that we enjoy this content and we are wanting justice for this young lady. It's just unfortunate. Both sides should be held equally accountable to me, but, that's how I feel. All right. Thank you so much. And I will see you all in the next one. Lady Luck Club out. Deuces.